Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villere's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villere's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villere's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Niet Insurance Agency. Auto, home, flood, business, 504-556-0809. Dave Niet, INSagency.com.
For over 48 years, Southern Tires and Auto Repair has provided services across the New Orleans metro area. Southern Tires offers a range of tires for all vehicles and ATVs. We also have a full suite of auto repair options, including brake repair, rim repair, custom exhaust, steering and suspension, tire siping, and so much more. Southern Tires and Auto Repair, 2550 Hickory Avenue in Metairie.
C&C Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, C&C provides patient-centered care for your entire family. C&C Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Afternoon, happy Mardi Gras, and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we'll cover all the home teams. We'll talk about the Saints. We'll talk about Tulane, LSU, UNO basketball. We'll talk about Tulane and LSU football. And we'll finish up with the Pelicans again on the trading deadline day. 2 p.m. today is the trading deadline. They are expected to make a couple of small moves. We'll see how that works out. Hopefully we have that for you before the end of the program. Joining us on our program today, two great guests. Two guys, again, that I love having on this program. Jude Young, the voice of UNO Athletics, and, of course, part of CrescentCitySports.com. And, of course, Guerry Smith of the Wave Report, and also NOLA.com, the Advocate and the Times-Picayune. Before we go to those guys, we got a great announcement for you. Again, our director, William Hill, and his beautiful wife, Andrea, have a brand-new baby. Ashton Nicole Smith, again, is among us now. 5 pounds, 2.2 ounces, a beautiful baby girl. Congratulations to the Hill family from all of us here at WLAE-TV, and we look forward to Will getting back again after enjoying time with his family. But with that said, gentlemen, welcome back to the show. Appreciate it. First of all, tell us a little bit about what's going on in your life, my friend. Again, I know you're traveling a lot with the privateers, but of course, CrescentCitySports.com, of course, the radio show on 106.1 FM. Tell us all about it.
You know, you said a lot going on this time of year for me with UNO basketball heading into the home stretch of college basketball season. I'll be on the road this weekend. I'll miss all the Mardi Gras fun. But also with CrescentCitySports.com, we never stop, and every sport we cover, and it's the postseason. Just finished with wrestling, we're covering soccer, we're getting ready for basketball, and we're broadcasting games during and leading up to all of those events as well. And of course, 24/7 coverage with analysis of everything New Orleans sports and Louisiana high school as well at CrescentCitySports.com. And I make a little time to do at least one radio show a week on Tuesday night at 6 o'clock, part of the All Access block that follows your great show on 106.1.
And of course, as we say, again, on the road with UNO a lot, and of course, hopefully, again, we'll start to see some better college basketball around here. We'll get into that a little bit later. Guerry, welcome back to the show. I say it each and every week on our radio show. If you're a Tulane fan and you're not subscribed to the Wave Report, you're not keeping up what's going on with your Green Wave. Again, I think it is the most in-depth look at what's going on with Tulane athletics. He also writes again for the Advocate, the Times-Picayune. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, well, One thing I do in the WAVE report is I promise my subscribers when there's a big interview, I transcribe every word. I kind of regretted that promise yesterday. John Sumrall, unlike Willie Fritz,
30 minutes later.
Says great stuff, but
a man for few words who made a lot of work. Right.
And it was 30 minutes and 45 seconds, and I had to write a story for NOLA.com. But first, it took me a good 2 hours or so to transcribe all of that. But that. So if you want to see everything that John Sumrall said at Tulane's press conference yesterday, go to the WAVE report, and then a full story on NOLA.com, because Tulane had a terrific. Usually your first-year coaches, now it's changed with the transfer portal a little bit, that helps, but usually your first-year coaches struggle on that first recruiting class, and John Sumrall hit a home run. Yeah,
there's no doubt. Again, that's the good news with what's going on with the colleges right now. Is again, LSU and Tulane look like they had a really good class coming. We'll get into that a little bit later on in the program. Let's talk some Saints. The big news again is Clint Kubiak expected to be named the offensive coordinator. He is currently the passing game coordinator for the 49ers. Son of Guerry Kubiak, former Texans and Broncos coach. He's been coaching in the NFL since he was 25. He was the Minnesota quarterback coach in 2019-2020. He was promoted to the offensive coordinator in 2021. That lasted one season when Mike Zimmer was fired. Now, again, from what we understand, he's bringing the Shanahan system over. I'll take you first, Jude. Everybody seems to be very excited about this hire. Right. What's your take? Are you excited about the hire, and if you are, why?
Well, I won't go as far to say excited, because the proof is in the pudding. Is it a match based on the fact that we already knew who the quarterback would be, and essentially who the skill position players around which the ceiling of the offense is already built? It's there. The question is, will they be able to move forward? And I think this is a good time for it to switch to a outside zone blocking scheme to try to get the running game going with an offensive line that clearly needs to be retooled or coached up, depending on if you think Trevor Penning has a future and where it might be on the offensive line, for one. I like it because I was saying leading up to it, you either keep the status quo and somebody that's running more of the basic hybrid, I guess you call, I think we've heard Sean Payton refer to it as sort of a hybrid West Coast Coryell offense, elements of both. But I think the modern offense really has to win before the snap. We weren't seeing the type of motion pre-snap used with the Saints offense at or near the bottom of the league versus what a Shanahan-type offense will do in order to create matchups, in order to create confusion for the defense. So I love the fact that that is clearly going to change here. And I do like the idea of, if you're going to shake things up in a major way to try to get the most out of what's the worst part of your offense, which was the consistency in the running game and the offensive line, that if you're going to move forward and make some changes there, you change that scheme entirely as well. And if Alvin Kamara only has 1 year left here, perhaps, this will be better for him because you want to get him in space more. And I think Kendre Miller, we saw a little bit of that at the very end of his rookie year. He would thrive more in that sort of look as well. It's good at getting the playmakers the ball in space. Just the style of that offense always schemes up the right way to attack week in, week out, so that you're dictating to the defense and not vice versa. I didn't feel like the Saints did that on a consistent basis, and I think it's going to help Derek Carr have the type of easy throws on a consistent basis so that he's not settling for these throws, but they get him into the rhythm early in games. And also you like about that offense that they do scheme up what they need to be successful, run or pass in the red zone. And I think that was the biggest issue for the Saints all year long, the fact that they improved a little bit at it. In the end, had them as a top 10 scoring offense, which it didn't feel that way, but it was a much different looking offense the last 6 weeks of the season, though, with Carr settling in. And I think they can go steps further, that Pete Carmichael sort of reached his ability to take it past that limit.
What's your take, Gary?
Yeah. What Jude said. He's right. The proof is in the pudding. On paper, this was an excellent hire, and it put the lie. A lot of people were saying they're not going to be able to get somebody good because of the shaky coaching situation. Those are prized positions in the NFL, and confident people bet on themselves. So I never thought that was going to be a factor, that it was a make or break year for Dennis Allen. But they needed to make these changes. He mentioned the running game. I mean, it really is insane to me that Alvin Kamara did not have a run of 30 yards all year long. I mean, that's. I mean, they have to get better in the run game. Right. They have to, and I'm assuming they're going to keep Alvin Kamara around. And there's no reason with a back like him that you shouldn't be more effective running than this team was. They needed new ideas. They definitely did improve. He mentioned the scoring. The Saints were 7th in the league in point differential in the year, and the only teams better than them were like Dallas, Kansas City, Buffalo, Kansas, Baltimore. But that didn't meet what we actually saw, and having the easiest schedule in the history of the world helped that a lot.
Yes, it did.
But there was zero excuse for that team not to win the division this year. Zero. They had to make changes, and he did, and hopefully it'll work out for him here.
I want to talk about the zone blocking scheme, because again, the big question is, do they have the players on that offensive line that can play that scheme? Are they athletic enough? You mentioned Trevor Penning. That's one of the questions going in here, because again, to me, much like a lot of us believe, this has to be another big man draft for this team, both on offensive and defensive side of the ball. Your take on that?
Yeah, that's the real question mark as far as when you say athleticism, to be able to handle more movement as an offensive lineman. You talk about lateral movement. You talk about how quickly you can get to the second level.
That first step, man.
And I think, for example, Cesar Ruiz might thrive as a guard in that scheme versus more of what he was asked to do on a regular basis.
Fair point.
Transitioning to that position from center in the first place. I think Eric McCoy will be fine. I think he's a solid above average center in the league, and he'll be able to function well there. But assuming right now that Ryan Ramczyk will never play another snap for the Saints, I think you have to think worst case with a knee condition like he's dealing with. Then you're talking about needing to fill 2 tackle spots. I don't know if Andrus Peat fits that moving forward, even though he filled in more than admirably. I think we're all shocked how well he played at left tackle. But is Penning a tackle? Is he a guard? A lot of those questions being answered become easier because now you've opened the doors a little bit more to say, how creative can we be, whether in free agency, in the draft, to find the type of lineman that can fit our new needs, and you're not so boxed in with what wasn't working. There was a disconnect there between what they were able to get out of high investments in the draft and what you saw on the field and the end result based on the offense they were trying to run that was nearly 2 decades in the making. So the change is going to help there, because we've seen, even with injuries, the Shanahan offense keeps on rolling. They're better when Trent Williams is out there at left tackle, but when he's not, they're still successful. That's part of the scheme being successful and making the pieces work, even the backups in a league where injuries are going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, good schemes don't fall apart just because the personnel doesn't fit exactly what they're doing. So, I mean, yes, you do need athletic guys, but that scheme works as long as you're functional up front. The Saints' offensive line was dreadful at the beginning of the year. It was amazing how much they got better with the same guys who we were ripping and everything else. But yeah, I don't think matching your personnel to the scheme is going to be that big a deal. It is a proven scheme. It's all over the NFL now. I'm not too worried about that aspect.
McCaffrey has excelled in this offense, and you got to believe that for Kamara, even though some people believe he's on the downside of his career, this could be the elixir for him to really step back into what he was, if there's anything left there. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I thought Kamara played better than his numbers this year. He just didn't have holes.
That's the truth.
A lot of the time. I mean, he just didn't. How many times? I mean, he's a guy that used to never get hit in the backfield, and routinely this year he was having to dodge people in the backfield. I think, he didn't play a full season. Obviously, he missed those few games. I think he's going to. I think there's still a lot left in the tank. Now, running backs lose their tread quickly, so I could be wrong on that, because when they go down, a lot of times they stay down. There's no doubt about that. But I saw enough from him that I think you can still build with him for next year.
I mean, he was dealing with a stacked deck against him, because if you can't run the ball between the tackles, you don't have any conconsistency there. And the other team knows, oh, he's an excellent receiver. The Saints are going to get him the ball in the flat. They're going to get it to him in space. Guess what? He's got people waiting there for him. Not a person, but that was the predictability of the Saints offense. And when you take away the easy pass play to the back out of the backfield, out of that style of offense, and you're not running the ball, then everything that makes up a running game or fills in the gaps when you don't have a consistent one was wiped out. And that's where just the ability to be a better pass blocking offensive line, even when injuries hit, that sort of speaks to, okay, Derek Carr is better than he looked at the beginning. I think we saw his spike years with the Raiders and thought, well, yeah, we have some evidence of that. He had to deal with a lot there, and I think some of his own doing with his own personality, maybe not building the relationships he needed to with the skill talent around him. But all of that did come along, and that's where when people want to argue, what are Dennis Allen's strengths as a head coach? We've heard a lot about his weaknesses, but I think guys hang in there through the course of the season, and he keeps a steady tone. It doesn't get too up or too down. And when you're dealing with the downs, that's really good because eventually the professionalism sort of shines through, and the players do play hard for the coach. And it did something for Derek Carr, whereas he got rid of staffers on the offensive side of the ball. He must have made some sort of inroads there in order to help Carr steady the ship and make this offense much better by, I say, around Thanksgiving than what we saw before that.
I want to stay with Carr for a moment because, again, it looks as though his $35.7 million cap hit this year is going to be restructured. It's about a $30 million base salary. They can lower his cap hit to about $12.6 million in 2024. They'll say about $23 million there. I guess the question is, when you look at him as a quarterback, size, accuracy, mechanics, when he's protected, he plays really well. When he's not protected, he doesn't really have the ability to be to get out of trouble. In an era where defensive athleticism is maybe at its height, you almost need a mobile quarterback. We've seen Purdy excel in this system. Some believe that, again, that Carr can do the same. Guerry, what's your take? Is he Purdy showed some real athleticism, okay, that maybe a lot of people didn't think he had in the playoffs. With this system coming in, does it fit what Derek Carr does?
We'll find out. I'm skeptical about Derek Carr. I was from the start. I don't think he's a terrible quarterback, but he's been inconsistent for most of his career, and you saw that again this year. There were some weeks when he looked terrible early in the year. He looked pretty darn good at the end of the year, but I don't know how much he's never really shown that consistency. And I honestly, I didn't like, just off the field, I didn't like what he said about Michael Thomas the other day. I mean, Michael Thomas is going to be back on the team. Michael Thomas, the second, whenever
for
they
the, for the audience, be specific.
Michael Thomas had tweeted, just basically ripped Carr for saying he got him injured during a game with a bad pass. So Carr comes out and says, I love Michael Thomas, and then passively aggressively then talk about, well, Michael, he wasn't the #1 receiver anymore, and I think Chris Olave, and so those were some issues with him, and I hope he's happy, but I love the guy. And then he just proceeded to, and that's not what a leader does. I mean, he's right. Michael Thomas can't be back on this team with the way he acted this year. But Drew Brees would never say stuff like that in public, and clearly there were times this year when Derek Carr's teammates were not big fans of Derek Carr, and the Saints are, I'm not going to use the word stuck with him because I think he's better than being stuck with. But I've never seen anything out of him that indicates that he can be a guy to lead you to a championship.
Well, they're going to add some dummy years to this deal, like they always do. Again, they're going to try to. That contract was structured to be able to utilize that $30 million base to be able to get out to open up cap room this year. What's your take?
I agree with a lot what he said, because it's obvious that Derek Carr does have some issues, some limitations, both as a physical player and personality-wise. At least when he's talking about a player who's leaving, who you know may be out the door. Heck, even Peyton Manning once called his kicker liquored up for saying something crazy in public. So I mean, even the greats can do that. But the point about Carr is, we'll always question until we see the Saints actually get that far, that he can get you all the way. But right now, you're just trying to get back into the postseason, be a division champion, and see how you can match up where anything goes in the postseason. We just need to see that first and know that once we get to a stable environment where he's playing on a team that's on near level terms or level terms with opponents in January. We haven't seen that yet in his career. Even when he's made the postseason, his team has not been on level terms, or he's been injured. He's not going to be the mobile guy that you mentioned. He's certainly not a Brock Purdy, who's a quick little-ish quarterback, where more smaller quarterbacks can thrive now, particularly if they are both accurate and mobile. But it's a shame that he doesn't have that natural in-pocket mobility as a pro-style quarterback. He's got to be protected. And if he has confidence behind his line that he's going to have a basic level of protection, we've seen that he can be productive. And then it comes down to, can he be productive against the blitz? If your offensive line is good enough to force teams to have to blitz you, that should be an advantage. It took a long time to even get to that point this season. So again, Carr is a work in progress, and I can understand certainly, and we saw it around the league with all the injuries, and I don't think that's going to change. Quarterbacks are going to get injured in numbers. You can do a heck of a lot worse than Derek Carr. Unfortunately, that might be the best thing I can say about him right now.
How do you guys think Taysom Hill will be utilized in this offense? Some rumors out there, the Saints may be looking to move him. I think it'd be a big mistake. Plus, the cap hit would be enormous as well.
If he stays, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, I'm sure there will be parts of the offense that have worked that Kubiak's going to want to keep in place, and the whole Taysom Hill ecosystem, if you will, within it. I mean, there's no reason to change
Why
that.
get rid of a unicorn?
Right, exactly. And if anything, we've argued over the years sometimes Pete Carmichael didn't utilize him enough at the right times, especially when those red zone troubles were evident. He can still bring that to the table. Now, he's somebody who is an amazing athlete as he is. You have to wonder about, with his age, is he going to fall off a cliff at some point? So the Saints should always be willing to explore, especially when there's Sean Payton out there that the rumors are already saying showing interest. Explore and see if you can win a trade. Everybody on your roster should be on the block for a price. That doesn't mean that you should make the deal. If he comes back and he's still Taysom Hill, I have no doubt that Kubiak will be able to use him, just like he was just in or about to leave an offense that gives Deebo Samuel the ball every which way. You have a weapon who's special. It's not that complicated to go get him the damn ball.
And Taysom Hill's improved quite a bit as a tight end, as a straight tight end. This is a guy, he wasn't very good at running routes and catching the ball in traffic. He's
catching the ball with his hands now.
He's catching it. He's too valuable a weapon to discard unless you can get something really, really good for him. He's still a unique talent, and I think I'll be a good offensive coordinator uses a guy like Taysom Hill, so I'll be surprised if he doesn't have a pretty big role in the offense next year.
Guerry, we'll stay with you for a moment. Chemistry, trying to putting in this new system. It took Carr a while to be able to absorb the quote quasi Payton system. And there were no excuses this season, okay? I mean, you know, Allen's had the ability to be able to go in and change his whole defensive staff, and change the whole offensive staff. He's on a hot seat. You would think that with normal franchises, he has to win this year. Is that an excuse? Is that an excuse now? We're going to a new system. How quick, again, the offense, the quarterback and the rest of the team can digest this offense and perform at a high level? Like
you said, in a normal team, no. Whether the Saints are prepared to make that move is debatable, but I would have to think, yeah, hey, he finally got a winning record this year, first year in his career, but against the schedule, again, they blew a huge opportunity. All they had to do was win one more game, they win the division, and then how many times did I hear people during the year saying, why does it matter? If they get in the playoffs, they'll get killed anyway. No, they wouldn't have. You saw that Philadelphia team, they would have beaten that. The way the Saints were playing at the end of the year, they would have beaten that Philadelphia team. They would have given themselves a shot to go to Detroit and see what they could do. And so they're going to have to be better next year to even go 9-8 because the schedule's just not going to be nearly as easy. It was everybody said it was going to be. I kind of questioned it the year because the NFL changes from year to year when all these people are talking about how easy their schedule was, but it went exactly like people said. It was a ridiculously easy schedule, and they blew a massive opportunity. And so they're going to have to be significantly better next year to make the playoffs than they were this year.
Excuse me, same question, learning curve.
A brain trust is going to come in. Kubiak, whoever he brings as his quarterback coach, it could be his brother, for one, that we're hearing from San Francisco as the assistant.
Unless they block him.
Right, it's possible, we'll see. But what will happen there is, if it works, it's going to be a collaborative effort where Carr is very much involved with, this is what I'm comfortable with. The offensive coordinator can say, this is what we think you can be successful.
Didn't they do that with Gruden last year?
I think they did, but Gruden didn't stay. day.
Right.
If it's an everyday deal and it's an every week, this is what we're scheming up. And our plans in the offseason and into the preseason, thinking about what's going to be the core of our offense. Where do we think our strengths are in the passing game to make you successful? How good are you going to be when we're looking more to stretch out a defense with that blocking scheme, to be a play-action quarterback? Are you comfortable on the roll? What are you good at? And what do you feel like you're going to be good at? And then figure that out. All good offensive coordinators do that. Do I think that the Miami Dolphins could be even better with a more complete quarterback than Tua Tagovailoa? Yes, I do.
Right.
But they maximize with their talent around him what he does well, and some weeks they just scheme people to death and light up the scoreboard.
Right.
That's what you need to see from the right kind of effort. If Tua can do it, Carr can do it, and that's what we'll see or won't see based on how good Kubiak is reaching into the mind and the heart of Carr to buy in on a day-to-day basis. They have to work together, but it really does have to be the communication of comfort on both sides. I believe in you, you believe in me, and I don't believe that Pete Carmichael made that emotional connection. I think we see the type of personality he was, and you needed a little bit more with somebody like Carr, who's a pretty complex character.
Yes.
All right, we'll leave the Saints here for today's show. I do want to ask about the Super Bowl on Sunday. Kansas City, San Francisco. Guerry, I'll start with you. Who do you like? Why? Who do you think is going to win this game?
Yeah, well, sometimes I'm the kiss of death on this, but I'm still stunned. I'm stunned that the 49ers are favored in this game.
Yes.
And I'll go back. This is for people fairly old, but the last time I was this surprised by a spread was way back when John Gruden's Tampa Bay played Oakland, and Oakland was favored. And I remember thinking, but Tampa Bay's the better team, and then Tampa Bay beat them easily. I've been wrong a lot since then, but I was right on that one. I feel the same way about this one. San Francisco's not playing very well right now. Earlier in the year, they were a great team. Their defense isn't playing well. Brock Purdy, I actually fall on the, is he a system or good? I fall on the good side, but he's not playing that well right now. He's played really well when it counted, but he was lucky. They were lucky to even be in a position to win those playoff games, and part of that was because he was playing so poorly. So you look at the matchup between him and Patrick Mahomes, I really don't see any edge. The way the teams are playing right now, Christian McCaffrey is the only thing that San Francisco has, and Kansas City for a lot of the year was shaky against the run. That seems to be shored up too. If Christian McCaffrey has a huge day running the ball, then I could see San Francisco having a chance. But right now, I think Kansas City's playing better defensively than San Francisco, and I think they're playing as well offensively, and they've got the ace in the hole. They've got Patrick Mahomes, and the Niners don't. So I'll be pretty surprised if Kansas City doesn't win this game.
I've heard a lot about the professionals or the sharps willing to stick by their numbers and the analysis of the rosters. And the latter is true. San Francisco, top to bottom, has a more talented roster.
No doubt.
But it's not a wide, crazy gap that you can account for what you said. San Francisco very fortunate in the postseason. They haven't been as sharp since that loss to Baltimore in prime time in December. On the flip side, Kansas City figured out who they are this year. Yes, they have shaky wide receivers that take away their explosiveness. So we found one, Rashee Rice, who stepped up. He's a solid possession guy. We have a legendary tight end. We have a solid running back who gets the tough yards, runs hard, and we have the best quarterback going, and in the end, maybe we'll say the best ever, and Mahomes. Once Mahomes stopped taking chances, once they played the right collection of players and got the ball solely in their hands and took out of the equation guys like Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore, who were dropping passes and turning them into interceptions and losing games. Once they took that out with a solid defense, they were Kansas City again. And when Kansas City gets a lead on you, Steve Spagnuolo's defense is rock solid, and Andy Reid knows how to run out the clock in a game. So if San Francisco falls behind, they're not coming back like they did against the Packers and like the Lions. And I just think in the end, they should have adjusted the numbers for what the Chiefs are right now and not what they were 2 months ago. And same for the 49ers. The spread should be flipped. I think Kansas City is going to win the game. And if they're in the lead by halftime, they're not going to give up that lead. I don't see a shootout because of the way Chiefs football is right now until they fix that wide receiver core depth, which is they're going to go with the short passing game. Mahomes scrambles in the postseason, which he doesn't in the regular season, to extend drives. And I think Isaiah Pacheco is the key to the whole thing because he helps them move the chains. He helps them score in the red zone. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire finally being healthy to spell him has had big moments in this postseason. They've gone through 3 tough games to get here. And I think by the numbers, it might be if they win it all, would be the toughest run to a Super Bowl in the history of the league from a wild card round, the opponents they've played, and I think they're going to do it. Give me Pat Mahomes all day.
Yeah, and let me tell you who's proven me wrong over the recent years is Steve Spagnuolo, because I agree. The 1 year I covered the Saints full time was his year when Peyton was suspended, and the players hated him. The defense set records that still exist for the worst defense for a single season. And I listened to, and I thought the guy was an overrated bum. He's done a heck of a job with Kansas City, because the last time they played San Francisco in the Super Bowl, their defense was a weakness, and that's why they almost lost that game. And now I think they're second or third in the NFL. Their tackling against the Ravens was absolutely tremendous. Their secondary is terrific. He's done an absolutely terrific job. So I don't know what happened. I don't know what was going on that year with the Saints, but that man can coach.
You give him players, you give him a front four that can be versatile and certainly get to the quarterback. He can make it work from there. He didn't have that here that time. Saints didn't have a lot of anything, and he was terrible, and like he had with the Giants. It's Jimmy's and Joe's over X's and O's in the end, but he does a good job when he has the right kind of players of maximizing their top end potential. The L'Jarius Sneed, the La Tech product, who was a safety at times in college, and people thought that's where he's going to have to play in the pros. Now one of the best corners in the league, physical. That's an organizational success. That's a front office that's finding talent on that side of the ball. When people were wondering, oh no, are the Chiefs going to keep winning? They've done much better adding talent to the defensive side the last 2 or 3 years to keep winning than they have, ironically, on the offensive side. But if you have Pat Mahomes, you can get away with it.
Almost the same, right? Almost the same. All right. Let's take a break here. We come back. We've got a lot to get into. We'll talk college football. We'll talk college basketball. We'll touch on college baseball, just maybe get a little preview from these guys and what they think is going to happen. And then we'll get into the Pels. Again, where today is the NBA trading deadline. It's at 2 o'clock when this show ends. So again, hopefully we'll have some information on whether the Pels make a move or not. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Our guest today, Guerry Smith, and also Jude Young. Don't move.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Here we go. All right. Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Let's talk a little bit about the college game. Let's start with basketball. Right now, LSU 12-10, 4-5 in the SEC. They're ninth overall. They lost. They got blown out last night by Tennessee. They got Alabama, Florida, South Carolina, and Kentucky coming up. Tulane, 13-9, 4-6, 8th in the American Athletic Conference. And UNO 8-15, 3-7, 7th in the Southland. Let's take LSU first. Well, I'll tell you what, since you're the voice for the UNO, let's take UNO first.
Well, we just won a game, so that felt good after a 6-game losing streak.
Give me your thoughts on where you guys are, season and expectations. After what? So far 8 wins in the season.
It was staggering, even though you didn't have the win total because you're playing all these money games on the road in the non-conference, how the defensive progress that with a lot of new staffers, that you saw it for a team under Mark Schlesinger that wants to play a lot of man-to-man. There was progress there that seemed to disappear once league play started, and the team lost its confidence. Now they held HCU in their last game to 58 points, and maybe they can carry that over here on the road for a couple of games and on the back end of the Southland Conference schedule. But they're going to go as far as their ability to defend is going to take them. them, because once they get stops, they're a team that plays oftentimes 4 guards / wings and can get up and down the floor, and they do have a difference maker. If they can be in games, then Jordan Johnson, who right now is 6th in the country, has been top 5 in average points per game. The senior from Memphis is a tremendous scorer, not just on the mid-major level, but when you watch him, you see that he's somebody special. As long as he's healthy and out there, he really gives them a chance to put things together like they did last year when they won 6 of their last 8, got into the conference tournament semifinals. Look, it's all to build up towards the conference tournament. Unfortunately, right now for UNO, they've dug such a hole that even if they make the conference tournament, they're going to have to win 4 games in 4 days. And at the end, probably waiting is Will Wade's McNeese team that's 20-3 and loaded with players. Some might say the best players that money would buy. I'm not going to say that, but he just got a nice contract extension and reimbursement for his efforts, and they're selling out the place. So who am I to argue? They're really happy in Lake Charles, and hopefully UNO can be happy in Lake Charles and be playing their best at least when they get there.
You take one on the private team.
First, I guess McNeese gave Will Wade a strong-ass offer there to stick around.
Yes, they did. But, yes, they did.
I can't lie and say I was paying attention to UNO's non-conference schedule because, like you said, it's money games. But in conference play, they just weren't playing any defense, and the numbers. What my eyes told me, the numbers backed up because I wrote a story for NOLA.com a couple days ago on it. They were second. I think there's 362 Division I teams. They were 360th in percentage of 2-point baskets given up because teams were just driving to the basket and scoring at will on them, and whether their personnel is defensively oriented or not, that's an effort thing or a confidence thing or a combination of both. And if they actually start playing some defense, which they did against HCU the other night, they have a chance to at least do something and get back. Because I mean, their 6-game losing streak was earned. They were playing awful basketball, and they just if they can, they're a pretty good offensive team. If they can just guard people at all, they'll have a chance to do something.
Outside of McNeese, they can compete talent-wise with any team in the league. One of their 3 wins in conference over the second-place team, A&M Corpus Christi, who if they wouldn't have collapsed and blown an 18-point lead at home against McNeese, they would be in first place right now, not the 20-3 Cowboys. So that's how good UNO can be, but it's all about consistency, particularly in conference play when everybody knows what you can and cannot do well. So you're under the microscope at that point, and early on, the Privateers didn't react well to it. Maybe now they're ready to make the turn, where last year they got it going on the road in particular in February. And they've got a chance to do the same thing with a road heavy schedule this time around.
Tulane, 13-9 as I mentioned. They're 8th in the American Athletic Conference. Give me your thoughts on the Wave.
It's been a struggle record-wise. I still think this team has a chance to turn it around. The league has turned out to be a lot better from the bottom than it was expected to be, because there was no reason to expect it to be this good, because last year it wasn't. Last year it was very top-heavy. Tulane went 12-6 in the league last year. They expected to at least do that well this year, but the reality is they lost Jalen Cook to LSU, and he was a 2-time first-team all-conference performer, and they replaced him in the lineup with Colby King, who couldn't get off the bench at St. John's last year, and their coach got fired. Colby King had a terrific trip to China when they played in the World University Games this summer. He started off the year really well. He's still doing some good things, but he's not Jalen Cook, and that's shown up lately. So they're kind of they're one explosive guy short, but they've lost a lot of close games. They've won some close games too. They've got they play at Memphis on Sunday. They already beat Memphis once. Memphis has been in disarray themselves, but they've got a lot of talent. I think we'll find out a lot about what this Tulane team is this Sunday, because they hadn't had a break all year. They had that China trip, so they were already a little spent going into the year, and they finally have a break, 6 days off before that game. I think if they can win at Memphis and get that sweep, which is no guarantee, they have a chance. Then they play 3 teams that they lost to on the road earlier this year: North Texas, UAB, and one other one, and they can win all those games. They can beat those teams, and they're close in all these games. They almost beat FAU. They lost on a foul in the last second. There's nobody in the league they can't beat. They've just got to string good games together, and they're putting a lot of pressure on themselves, because this is a team. It's not media. They themselves thought they were going to make a run at the league championship this year, and they're sitting here 4-6. They've got to go on a run to a bunch of seniors on the roster. they have to fulfill their own expectations, and we'll find out in the next 2 weeks.
The American was heavily affected by conference realignment, so new programs coming in to replace some real powers, particularly Houston leaving. And what happened is a surprise. Charlotte wasn't supposed to be this good. South Florida's having their best season in literally 3 decades. So these changes with new opponents, North Texas, I think they won the NIT last year. They are like Virginia. They choke the life out of games. You've got teams like Memphis who want to get up and down the floor, and everything in between in this conference. So you've got to be on your toes, game in, game out, home or away, because you're going to be challenged in many different ways. And I always question with Ron Hunter's teams that I've seen their ability to get enough stops, but the firepower, if everybody's healthy, is there. Not only can they beat you up tempo, but they're really good at getting to the free throw line. They're just an aggressive team that can beat you downhill, create inside, outside shots off of that. Sure, they'd be better off if they had a little rim protection, but if they're playing at their best, they can outscore anybody. And I think they can still make a run because, quite honestly, that league, even though there's some good coaching jobs going on there, outside of Memphis, where you wonder about Penny Hardaway getting the most out of his talent, Tulane can match up with anybody on their best day.
What about LSU?
Yeah, I mean, Greg, he inherited an incredible tough situation when he got there, and you mentioned their next 4 games.
Right.
They'll be underdogs in all 4 of those games, sizable underdogs in those games. Yeah, Jalen Cook is on their roster. He's a 4th-year player who may or may not come back. Their 2nd and 3rd leading scorers are seniors, so I'm not sure where the upside is right now. They've played hard for them. I mean, they've blown out some teams and been blown out by a lot of teams. I think it's too early. I think next year we'll find out whether he's making progress, because he's going to have a different team next year. It's not like the guys, and again, 2 of their top 3 scorers are seniors, and Jalen Cook, he tried to go to he's too short, but he tried to leave Tulane to go to the NBA 2 years ago. So I don't know if he'd be back either. So it's a developmental process. I don't see a whole lot of hope for them to do anything significant the rest of this year, though.
Right, and their expectations and their whole outlook was so different than UNO and its low major league, and obviously a mid-major like the American for Tulane, and what Ron Hunter's been trying to build. You're talking about a guy in Matt McMahon who was asked to come in and take over when the fans didn't want the last coach to go and restart a roster with the NCAA's eyes upon you, and you're supposed to be the guy who's coming in to do the clean way, the right way. So that means it's going to be slow, no matter how you do it. Last year was a disaster. They're already a better team than they were last year, and they have 2 top 100 recruits signed. So moving forward, if they do well in the transfer portal, they got good players, particularly with the local ties like Cook and Jordan Wright to come home. That really helped. And when they've stepped up and played well, LSU scored a lot of points on SEC teams. The non-elite in the league, they showed what they can do against a struggling Arkansas and score 95. I mean, that's pretty good progress from what they were last year. They just need to keep taking those steps. And LSU fans need to understand, they gave him a 7-year contract. He's not going anywhere. That athletic department's eaten enough buyouts already in football alone that they're going to sit there and let this play out, and McMahon's at least got a couple more years to work and see if he can build something. I mean, he'll have to convince me that he can get it to an elite level, but let's be honest about LSU's past. They've gotten to the elite level a bunch of times since Dale Brown, but they haven't stayed there very long, even under good coaches.
When I was covering University of Florida, LSU made a run to the Final Four in 2006, and what did they build off of that? Nothing.
And that's happened many times before.
Too many times. I want to briefly look at college baseball if we could. Let's start with UNO. Your thoughts on, again, the Privateers this year.
Well, the Privateers this week picked 3rd in the Southland, with defending champion Nichols returning a lot of their talent, particularly their pitching. So that's a pretty good place to be, considering there's some quality bats that Blake Dean's going to have to replace, but he feels like he has his best collection of pitchers who are going into the season healthy that he's had in a long time, to have a solid weekend rotation, and guys that he didn't necessarily have as the bridges and middle relief to be able to win as many games as they could have. Now, will the offense be as good? I don't know. You're replacing an all-conference level middle infield for one, but he likes the players he has there and thinks they're going to be solid, maybe not power bats, but contact hitters who keep keep that defense that was really good up the middle solid. Miguel Useche is returning as a catcher with a really good back. Isaac Williams in center field, all conference level player who's been a starter now for 3 years. And Mitchell Sanford, who started at LSU, is a really good left-handed bat that brings power. And I know Blake Dean, he always gets the most out of his bats. If the pitching is there, they're going to compete in the Southland.
Yeah, I'm not that familiar with UNO's personnel this year, but I'm familiar with Blake Dean. He's a good coach, and he does. I mean, covering Tulane, I've seen the difference for years when Tulane played UNO in the way those two teams played. I know Blake Dean does like his team this year. UNO's had a couple of chances to get to an NCAA regional under him. Couldn't win a championship game against, I think, Northwestern State about 5 or 6 years ago. Had 2 chances to beat Southeastern to get into a championship series 2 years ago and couldn't get it done. But he's always got his team in the mix, and I would expect that again this year.
Take Tulane.
Yeah, I know they're the team I do cover every day, and I know nothing about whether they're going to make a rebound because it's all about their pitching, and their pitching was so bad last year. I think I said on the radio show that I would say, I'll repeat that line, I would say Tulane had no pitching last year, but I don't want to insult the word no. I mean, it was really, they couldn't.
Which is a great line.
They couldn't do anything on the mound, and so now they have a completely new staff, and it's a bunch of guys transfer from UCLA, a transfer from Virginia, a transfer from Loyola Marymount. They weren't stars on their team. That's why they transferred. They maybe showed some ability in the past. It completely depends on whether Tulane can get something out of these pitchers. Their hitting should be pretty good. T.O. Banks, who had a horrendous start last year to the point where I think he had like 35 strikeouts in his first 50 at bats and something like that. Ended up hitting over 300 for the year and was the best player in the league by the time the tournament got played. He's the preseason. How often Tulane was picked second to last in the American Athletic Conference, and he's the preseason player of the league. That's not normal. That's how good he is. Brady Margette, who's in the same recruiting class, he's an excellent player at first base. They're hoping that Jackson Lynn returns to form. He was having a terrific freshman year, and then he tore his UCL. He played through it last year as a hitter, but he was basically one-handed, and he had a rough year. If he can return to form, that gives them 3 really good cornerstones in the lineup. But if they don't get better pitching than last year, it won't matter. So we'll find out pretty quickly in the year starts whether this team can throw the ball over the plate and get people to miss. Neither which they could do last year at any time.
LSU Tigers.
Well, I mean, pick number 2 in the country in one poll, but second in the SEC West by the coaches in the league. That's how tough the league is. Look, they're not going to hit as many home runs as they hit last year, and they don't have a Friday night starter who's generational. Paul Skeen's gone, but what they do have, it's Thatcher Hurd, it's Luke Holman, the transfer from Alabama, Gage Jump, who's a very talented left-hander who had injury problems at UCLA, just like the storyline for Thatcher Hurd. The talent's there. They're probably going to be the weekend guys to start. They return a good mix of guys that have been developing in the shadows, who got the big postseason experience last year, like Nate Ackerman, Gavin Guidry, who looks like he's going to be a full-time pitcher and closer. So they should be really good and deep in the pitching area. And there's some positions that are going to be up for grabs throughout non-conference, but they've got talent. They still have Tommy White, Hayden Travinsky, a couple of power bats. If Jared Jones can earn his way on the field, that's another killer of the baseball. And Paxton Kling's somebody that they expect to make a huge jump this year, was a big-time recruit in and out of the lineup last year. Look, they've got a lot of good pieces. Are they College World Series championship good? I don't know, but if you ask me right now, I figure they're going to be #1 seed in a regional when it's all said and done, if they're even reasonably healthy.
Yeah, I think there's a better than 50% chance that they'll get back to the College World Series. It's hard to win a national championship, and they don't have Paul. And Paul Skeens he's one of the best pitchers in the history of college baseball. That's how good he was. But if it's yay or nay, LSU makes the College World Series right now, my guess would be yay.
Let's talk Tulane football. #1 overall class in the American Athletic Conference, edging out USF. According to 24 Sports, 16 high school signees, 3 JUCO, 13 transfers. Some all got transfers from Alabama, USC, Oregon, Kentucky, Troy, UCF, Western Kentucky, Furman, Idaho, and Louisiana Monroe. You spoke to him yesterday. Give me your thoughts. This is, I mean, picking up where Willie Fritz left off.
And even, again, he has to prove it on the field, but in the recruiting circles, he's swimming in lakes that Willie Fritz didn't even reach. And you got to give Willie Fritz a lot of credit for that, because he's made Tulane a place where players believe they can actually come and win, which just simply wasn't the case until a couple of years ago when he won 23 games in the last 2 years. You know, Ty Thompson, he was a top 10 player in the country coming out of high school. Now look, when a guy transfers, there's always a reason he transferred. Sure. And Ty Thompson, it's not that he was backing up Bo Nix at Oregon that would be any type of a red flag at all, but Oregon clearly did not think that he was definitely a guy that could be their starting quarterback because they brought in 2 players from the transfer portal. So he went in the transfer portal. Tulane got him. It's up to the coaching staff now to make him realize his talent. But he's a guy. I mean, again, he wouldn't even consider Tulane until a couple of years ago.
Why don't you take LSU for me? Number 4 in the nation in terms of their class in 2024. They're right now currently ranked number 1 in 2025. 20 of the 29 were Louisiana natives. 20 of the 25 of the 29 played high school football in either Louisiana or Texas. 11 of the 29 signees flipped most of those players were flipped from Texas A&M, where they had 4 of the top 50. 10 came from the SEC or the ACC. 1 came from the Big 12 in Colorado. How good of a class do you think this is? How good do you think this team can be with what Kelly did in the offseason? I
think they've maximized what they could do this year under the parameters in which they were working. Unlike Tulane, who I think NIL-wise, amongst the non-quote-unquote Power 5s, or if it's just Power 2 right now, is doing about as well as you can possibly do. And everybody, I just wanted to bring that up, that everybody's pulling in the same direction. Campus, athletics, support around the program. It's all at an all-time high, and you get the best up-and-comer on the market. Everybody said, if we could hire John Summerall, that would be fantastic. And that guy's gung-ho leaving a Troy program where he was dominating to come there and take that next step in his career. And I think Tulane's got a great chance to take even further steps. I think he's going to be a more aggressive coach. That ups your ceiling from year to year when you don't have a Tajay Spears around to maybe make a conservative offense look a little better than it was. But anyway, I think some Green Wave fans will appreciate that comment. LSU, I think they've got some issues with their NIL. So when you're battling the Texas A&Ms of the world, it makes it difficult, and you're not going to get everybody. But flipping Dominic McKinley, the defensive tackle from Acadiana, that's their biggest need position, and he's probably going to play in the rotation at minimum year 1. Brian Kelly saying at the press conference after the signing, we have bigger need at defensive line, defensive tackle, obviously. So that's a need area. But getting 13 of the top 17 players in the state, and a year where the state wasn't at its very best as far as the national ratings, that's a minimum for LSU, and that's going to affect where their class ranks. But look what they're doing for 2025 already. It's an exciting program to play for because of what LSU just did offensively, even though their defense cost them the ability to do even more. People want to play for a team like that, an exciting team. So they've got the chance to come up with the number 1 rated quarterback, running back in Harlem Berry here out of St. Martin's, wide receiver. They're in line to do special things with the 2025 class, and it helps that Nick Saban is gone because that door opens wider. Some of those players you couldn't beat Alabama out for, I expect Brian Kelly will as this class continues to grow. I think they only have 9 commitments right now, and they just signed 30 players. Tulane signed 32. That's going to be the norm. So LSU could bring in one heck of a haul and get Kelly where he wants to go, which is be a complete roster and compete for a national championship.
Guerry, Pels 30-21. They're first in the Southwest Conference. They're tied with the Suns for 5th overall in the West. Beating the Clippers last night in a big game for them. Now look, the Clippers were coming off a 6-game road trip. The Pels played well. Today is the trading deadline. The Pels have the Lakers on Friday, Portland on Saturday, Memphis on Monday. They're back here in New Orleans on Ash Wednesday against Washington. There's a lot of talk that maybe Najee Marshall may be moved for picks. There were talks about Valanciunas. That doesn't look like it's going to happen. Maybe bringing in a Devontae Murray from Atlanta as the point guard. Give me your thoughts on the Pels.
Yeah, I think they're pretty good as they stand right now. In fact, I think they're a little underrated this year, and I've been one of the more skeptics about them for years and years, but I looked it up before I came on the show. They're 9 games over 500. If they beat the Lakers tonight, which is a big if, they have a pretty easy schedule coming up. They haven't been 15 games over 500 at any point of any year since 2009. And I feel like this team has some potential. We've never seen them healthy going into the playoffs. Will they be that this year? We don't know. But I look at Zion Williamson. I look at these guys, C.J. McCollum. I mean, I think this team has potential. We'll find out.
Right.
They've been in a rut recently where they're beating the bad teams and not doing well against the good teams. But if you go back to the beginning of the year, every team that's going to make the Western Conference playoff, they've beaten at least once, except for Phoenix, who they've only played once. I'm not sure there's a ceiling on this team. We just don't know because we don't know, and it depends on the toughness of these guys. I think they have the talent. I mean, I think they have the talent. The West does not have any great teams. Denver probably is. They're probably just coasting. Other than that, every team has flaws. I don't see why the Pelicans can't be in that mix, but we don't know that because we don't know how tough these guys are and what they'll do in the playoffs.
You mentioned toughness. That's one of the reasons why I would not trade Najee Marshall. I think he's the toughest guy on the team, but give me your thoughts.
Right. I think just keeping the whole band together is the smartest thing to do, and maybe they have to do the Marshall deal just because of the economics of it. He hasn't been playing. I'd love to have him there when you need him.
Well, because if injuries happen, he's going to have to step in.
No doubt, but you have a lot of depth here. And you've got so many ascending players on the roster. That's what's exciting. The first-round pick working out and adding another shooter, and sometimes you just can't get him on the floor, especially now Trey Murphy's healthy again. Herb Jones does what it takes to get better as a shooter, just to be enough of a threat there for spacing, and you know what he brings defensively. Dyson Daniels, he's going to be a slow developer, I think, but he consistently shows progress
And he plays good defense.
as a glue player who can play defense and move the ball to the right places. If he gets any confidence as a shooter himself, he becomes a better player. And then there's the big three. C.J. McCollum wasn't healthy last year, but he gutted it out. We're seeing the real C.J. this year. Brandon Ingram, at times, he's amazing. The 41-point game just recently. But at other times, you see that his game would have been a much better fit 20 years ago than it is right now as far as a scorer goes. But you've got to keep him together with Zion and see what you can do through a whole season, the ebb and flow of the season, and how you evolve as a roster so that you can be playing your best and know what your best lineups are for different opponents to get to the postseason. Willie Green or any Pelicans coach in this era hasn't had that opportunity. It's setting up for that to happen here for the first time. So I didn't think we were going to see any dramatic in-season moves. There shouldn't be, because you're still learning about your team, and we're still learning about how to use Zion Williamson, apparently. Now Point Zion is emerging. I think that's the ceiling Pelicans. The ball needs to be in his hands to be able to be the playmaker and score. They couldn't do it early on, in part because he wasn't in shape enough. Let's be completely honest. He's getting better in that area, and they want to give him the ball because they know that he's a difference maker. And I think James Borrego being on the staff, that's why he was using him more as this sort of odd, catching the ball at the elbow, mid-range sort of setup, and not letting him be the guy. They know that if Zion's the guy and he's as good as advertised and stays healthy, that they could potentially turn into a championship contender. But it's turn into all of that. He needs to turn into that guy, and the team around him has to learn to be that team, because there's hardly any experience in that area. So people need to be patient. Like Guerry said before the show, if they can just be a top 6 seed, avoid the play-in, have a regular first-round series, go up against a good team, and who knows, maybe win. The more playoff games they play, the better they're going to be as far as what their ceiling for the future is. They're not winning a championship this year, but if they can just have a complete season for once, we'll know a lot more about what their potential really is.
Follow-up?
Yeah, I mean, and they're deep. Now, that deep doesn't matter in the playoffs unless you get injuries, but for the regular season, that helps. I don't think they're going to have a fade here. I think this game can end up almost 20 games under 500 as long as they keep their key guys healthy. And like you said, it's the great unknown. We just don't know what they're going to do, but they need to get some experience. And for the first time, I'm optimistic about this team, because a couple of years ago, when they went with the whole Van Gundy thing, it looked like they were going the wrong direction. They didn't realize that the NBA is a 3-point shooting league now, and you have to defend the 3 and you have to take the 3, and they had nobody that was doing either.
That's right.
They fixed that, and I just like this. I like this.
Well, let's
roster.
face it. So I'll leave with this, because I know we're almost done. But New Orleans fans who are fans of both major league franchises will say, at least in that case, the organization, when it's the same organization, was willing to say, we made a mistake. Maybe we need to get a different kind of coach. It's not working.
Well, that guy hasn't been around for 15 years. That's the reason why. So we'll go with that. Guerry Smith, Jude Young, thanks as always. Fantastic breakdown of everything happening here in sports. Happy Mardi Gras to both you guys. All right, thanks so much for tuning in. So many ways to catch our program. Now there's a QR code up on your screen that'll take you either to WLAE-TV website or, again, my website. Click on the screen, and of course, you'll never miss the program. Set your DVR to your favorite time slot of our program, and of course, you'll be able to catch that at your leisure. Also, again, 106.1 FM, that's weekdays 4 to 6. You can listen live at ericasher.com. Also, again, the iHeart TuneIn Radio app or our digital platforms. Anchor Spotify is where you can find our podcast. And of course, want to thank our underwriters who make this show possible, each and every one of those underwriters. Please support our underwriters and, of course, the folks here at WLAE-TV who produce our program. Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Logan Graffia. Also, we've got Danielle Wick today. And, of course, Alex Chacon directing our program. For Jude Young and also for Guerry Smith, I'm Eric Asher. Happy Mardi Gras to each and every one of you. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. Thanks for watching.